Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for How to Train Your Dragon. Everything we know about dragons is wrong. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for the live-action reimagining of How to Train Your Dragon. A dragon-sized thanks to our Viking friends at Universal Studios Canada for inviting us to see the movie early for review. If you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast celebrating the world of movies, TV shows, games, and all things geek-centric. I could never do this alone because we're Vikings. It's an occupational hazard. So joining me for this spoiler-free review are my two favorite mead guzzlers. First up, she's the menacing marauder and master of the monstrous nightmare. She's Megan, the mythical dragon charming Chambers.
Oh, I feel like the nightmare is the opposite kind of dragon that I would fly.
You rocking a Gronkle? What are you rocking with?
Probably, or like one of the babies.
just any of the babies.
Just a baby.
Just a baby. And swooping in, speaking of Gronkle, swooping in on his illustrious Gronkle, he's the dude with the chill tude and the most luscious locks of Viking hair. He's Darcy, the dubious dragon-hoarding Hudson.
A Gronkle I think fits me. I think we both chill out, and I would never need a later again, I don't think.
No, not ever. And I think, speaking of chilling out and dragon hoarding, I feel like that would be you'd be like the collector of dragons if you were in this world. You just collect them all.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I need a lot more space than I currently have for dragons. I'd say that much. And the feeding, I think, would be difficult.
Yeah.
If we go to Epic Universe and they have some sort of collectible dragon of any kind, you get all the different ones. I know they're going to end up on your wall next to your wands. But both of you, how are you doing? It's funny, Darcy. It feels like just yesterday almost that we spoke about a live action adaptation that Dean DeBlois worked on alongside Chris Sanders. But I want to start this conversation the same way I did with our conversation. Our review of Lilo and Stitch, which is to ask, the original How to Train Your Dragon came out in 2010. It's been about 15 years since that original one came out, and over 6 years since Toothless and Hiccup and the Vikings of Berk have been on the big screen. Starting with Megan, how are you both feeling now that you're back in the world of Berk? Have you missed these characters? Has it felt like Toothless has ever left you?
I really love these movies. The first one being one of those animated movies that I watch over and over and over again as a comfort film. The other two a little less comforting, but all in all a fantastic series and some of my favorite characters I've ever seen in animation. It felt really, really cool to dive back into that world. As hesitant as I was, I was very nervous about this one because I love those characters so much, but I had a great time.
Good to hear. Darcy?
Yeah, I mean, I love this film this series since the beginning. It was towards the end of my high school career, but me and my friends frequently went to the movies, and we saw this one was coming up. We're like, yeah, animated movie with dragons, I'm down. And from that moment, these are such lovable characters, and that second movie is honestly my favorite of the trilogy. So it's just some of the best storytelling. And again, if you mix dragons into anything, I'm probably going to watch it. So yeah, I was excited to get back into this one, as hesitant as we would be. Again, live action remakes in the past haven't gone over so well, so this one had some shoes to fill, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, I think How to Train Your Dragon 2 is like the Empire Strikes Back equivalent of the trilogy. But this is, it's funny, this series for me is one that I've always sort of admired from afar. And I couldn't tell you why, because it is held to such high acclaim and all my friends have constantly gone on about it, but I'd only seen the first one. So I got to revisit that recently and then also watch 2 and 3 with you, Megan, which was awesome. And I think the series does lose itself a bit in that third movie, but the way it ends is so perfect. And it was just such a overall the trilogy, like going through it and watching it and getting to watch that first one again. It really kind of made me stoked to be like, okay, now I'm here with you. I'm caught up. I'm here with you. I'm a fan of this franchise, and it doesn't seem like this franchise is going anywhere. For Darcy and Justin and I, we were actually lucky enough to be in attendance for a Q&A after our screening with director Dean DeBlois, where among letting us know that Jay Baruchel, the original voice of Hiccup, was in attendance at our theater sitting amongst us, and we didn't even know it, which is crazy.
Oh
I
my
guess
God.
if we did know it, it would have been an occupational hazard. But how many times can I say that this review? But he also let us know that he is already hard at work on what he just called Dragon 2. He said that he's already reached out to Kate Blanchett to come back, and that the sequel, which isn't confirmed, she isn't confirmed to come back, but he's reached out. He says her kids are huge fans of it, so hopefully that helps.
Whoa.
And he says he hopes that the sequel will offer the same opportunity to be able to expand the world, to keep the best about what people love about the story. And that there are things with every movie that he wishes he could have done a little bit better and gone deeper, and that's what he plans to do. So that is certainly very exciting. That reimagined sequel is slated to release on June 11th, 2027. But you gotta hover before you can soar. So let's get into this review, starting with a synopsis for the film, and bear with me, it's a bit of a longer one. From three-time Oscar nominee and Golden Globe winner Dean DeBlois, the creative visionary behind DreamWorks Animation's acclaimed How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, comes a stunning live-action reimagining of the film that launched the beloved franchise. On the rugged Isle of Berk, where Vikings and dragons have been bitter enemies for generations, Hiccup stands apart. The inventive yet overlooked son of Chief Stoic the Vast, Hiccup defies centuries of tradition when he befriends Toothless, a feared Night Fury dragon. Their unlikely bond reveals the true nature of dragons, challenging the very foundations of Viking society. With the fierce and ambitious Astrid and the village's quirky blacksmith Gobber by his side, Hiccup confronts a world torn by fear and misunderstanding. As an ancient threat emerges, endangering both Vikings and dragons, Hiccup's friendship with Toothless becomes the key to forging a new future. Together, they must navigate the delicate path toward peace, soaring beyond the boundaries of their worlds and redefining what it means to be a hero and a leader. The film stars Mason Thames, Gerard Butler, Nico Parker, Nick Frost, Julian Dennison, Gabriel Howell, Bronwyn James, Harry Trevaldwin, Ruth Codd, Peter Serafinowicz, and Murray MacArthur. How to Train Your Dragon is written and produced by Dean DeBlois and directed by Dean DeBlois, and it is also produced by three-time Oscar nominee Mark Platt and Emmy winner Adam Siegel. You can set off on the adventure when How to Train Your Dragon soars into theaters June 13th, 2025. So, as I said, it's been over 15 years since the first film, and 15 years since audiences fell in love with the incredible world of dragons and the incredible work done by DreamWorks Animation to bring this world to life. And I will say, having just recently revisited it, and even this, I would even go so far as to say in the sequel, it's crazy how the difference between the first one and the sequel, how much better it looks.
Oh, yeah.
That first one definitely feels like it has aged a bit, but getting to see, like you pointed out, Darcy, getting to see dragons done in this style and Vikings done in this colorful animated way was something that I think was pretty fresh at the time and was really, really wonderful to see. So let's talk about the look and feel of this live action reimagining. What did you think of the look of this movie, and did they capture it accurately?
I think the look was perfectly captured. I mean, it was a different Burke than we were used to from the animated movie, but the way they brought the idea of these worlds or different parts of the world coming together to create this village that fights these dragons was really cool. You can see how it was reflected in the costumes and the buildings and stuff like that. So that was really neat. And again, the dragons looked incredible. Like Toothless looked great, and in Stitch we were talking about how only Stitch looked great, but some of the other stuff kind of looked a bit, rushed or haphazard. Whereas this, all the dragons looked phenomenal, and anytime they were on screen, you were guaranteed to get some really cool looking effects and just feel the presence of a dragon, which was really cool.
Yeah, I think in our Lilo and Stitch review, I had said that Stitch was the best looking live action translated animated character that I'd ever seen. I think that Toothless will sit right alongside him
Mhm.
on that throne, and I think they captured him perfectly. They captured all the dragons perfectly, and I think they made enough design changes to almost, no pun intended, scale them backwards from how they made them in the animated one. Like Dean in the Q&A had mentioned how they used animal references. He talked about like a black panther and a salamander for Toothless,
Yeah.
and like a walrus for the gronkles, and a colorful bird for the natters or whatever. So I think the way that this animation team sort of worked backwards and created and make them a little bit more animalistic, but also kept Toothless looking perfectly toothless in more ways than one was absolutely excellent.
Yeah, one of my biggest fears going into this, before seeing any footage or trailers or anything, was that Toothless was gonna get that original Sonic treatment when they
Oh
totally
gosh.
defer from what the character truly looks like to try to make them look real when they're not a real thing, or the only portrayal we've ever gotten of dragons is, like, really harsh and intense and scary, and that's just not what these dragons are supposed to look like. So I think they did a beautiful and exceptional job converting a very cartoony looking character, not just Toothless, but like you said, all the other dragons. But they took the actual essence of those characters and made them into that CGI realistic look. So I would even say like the Whispering Death and the Gronkles and everything, they still had that essence of what we saw in the animated movies, but they looked like they were really brought to life, and that was amazing.
Yeah, and I think even the ability to take some of those dragons and make them kind of scary
Yeah,
in
oh
some of
yeah.
those
Mhm.
situations, right? It's like that's not something that you really felt, and I think that's another thing with the look and feel of this movie in terms of the vibe. There are elements that there were decisions made to ground it in that reality a little bit more and give it more of a darker tone and darker look. People are actually shown dying. We don't see them, I guess, actually like last breath, but we see them get engulfed in flames and things like that, get crushed. And so with that, I think it's because this film isn't holistically just pointed towards children, it is towards a bit of a broader audience. I think it gives them that freedom to kind of go that route. I will say on the opposite side of that, though, there were some elements about the transition to live action where I think your opinion of the sets and the costuming is going to come down to, and I think this is true for when it'll come up again when we talk about the story, but it's going to come down to how one for one you want things to be. Where the dragons I felt had enough design changes to make sense here, there were elements about the sets and the costuming that just looked way too clean for me. I think it reminded me of some of the footage that we've seen from Epic Universe at Universal Studios. But then some of those sets and things like that when they're on Berk, I just was like, this does look too fake. It doesn't look whatever. But again, I understand the want to not necessarily translate, actual Vikings. You're translating the How to Train Your Dragon version of Vikings and their environment and Berk. So I understand that parallel. I will say though, the shots in Dublin, Northern Ireland were absolutely gorgeous. There are scenes that you can absolutely tell these are mountainous. They didn't build these; these are from the earth. And in the Q&A with Dean, our colleagues Carlos Bustamante and Sangeeta Patel mentioned how they spoke with Dean and he mentioned how it was so cold shooting there. So I can imagine maybe there was a limit on how much they could film in those locations just due to literally the weather. But man, when you see Hiccup with Toothless for the first time in the test drive sequence, my heart just went a flutter. I got chills. I got the feeling of being on a ride, and I think I imagine it's what hardcore fans of this franchise want, and that is exactly what you get. We were lucky enough to get to see it, Darcy, Justin, and I, in IMAX, and seeing Toothless's wings stretch from one side of the screen to the other was maybe one of my favorite visuals I've seen all year, and it was really immersive. And they know what they had to do. They knew what they had to nail, and they nailed it. And that was maybe my favorite element in terms of when we're talking look and feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand where you're coming from when it comes to the look of the feel of the Vikings and their houses and stuff, and we do have to remind ourselves that this is still a family movie even
Yeah.
though it's a live action adaptation.
Mhm.
It's still meant for all audiences, so they can't make it too realistic. So, I actually found it a really great middle line
Mhm.
where it still felt like it was representing the animated movies, but it was a little more grounded than being those like over the top crazy roofs and stuff. But I completely agree with you. The landscape and the skies were incredible. Any scene that takes place in a cloud is just as magical as it is in the animated movie. Um, I I felt myself getting lost in those scenes. I stopped being a critic, reviewer, whatever you want to call us. I was a fan and I was just immersed in those moments. And like you said, Nate, test drive, I welled. My heart soared along with Toothless and Hiccup, and it the music is the music. It really, really helps carry this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, in that Q&A, Dean was talking about how they had two scenes they needed to nail, and one was Hiccup meeting or touching Toothless for the first time, and then the test drive sequence. And again, both those sequences, if you're a fan of them from the first one, they nail every single aspect of them. And then the fact that it's live action hits so much harder for some reason. Again, you know what to expect going into this movie if you've watched the first one, but seeing it in this new medium is just incredible, and it has so much more depth and meaning all of a sudden. It's so weird.
Well, that's just it. I mean, John Powell's score is a masterclass in driving emotion through music, matching the visuals and the moments on screen in those original films. And here it remains for the most part untouched. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Normally I'm kind of like, oh, it didn't really add more to the music, but I don't think the music needed any of that. And
No.
I just like you, Megan, I welled up. I mean, I when I rewatched the first one just a few days ago, I was welling up, and part of my brain was going like, "Why are you welling up right now? Like, this isn't exactly too sad, but it just something with that music and the visuals and the freedom and it
Mhm.
just felt so cool. You felt exactly how Hiccup felt in that moment, and you feel it again here. And I will say, you know, for me to well up to a scene that maybe I welled up the first time years and years and years ago, right, 15 years ago, that makes sense to me. For me to do it again after having pretty much just seen that sequence is really impressive. So again, I think for those elements, they nailed it, and John Powell's music is such a big part of that. But of course, another big part of when you're adapting these characters in this world are the characters, are the people who play them, the performances. Let's start off with Hiccup. Let's talk about Mason Thames as and I just learned this, by the way. Hiccup Horrendous Haddock the Third
That's
is
his
his
name.
full
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Apparently, I don't know if
Someone
that was
hasn't
maybe
watched the shows.
oh no, that's there
No.
you go. No, we have not watched the shows. But I'll start off and just say like I was not fully sold on Mason as Hiccup. I want to start off like and that's at the beginning of the film. I'm gonna don't worry, we get better. I think his hair still bothers me so much. I'm so
Yes,
sorry, but
yes,
I
it's the worst
understand
part.
dude, like I get in the original, like there's even a line I think that Astrid says. She says like, "Oh, with stupid hair or silly or bad hair or terrible hair or something like that." I understand it's supposed to look dumb, and I understand the emo straightened hair look was popular in the early 2000s when that movie came out, but it just looks bad when he's flying through the air. I mean, even Justin mentioned like he liked his windswept hair so much more, and I hope in future installments we get his windswept hair. But I will say, I think Mason's performance gets stronger as the movie goes on. I think at first I wasn't buying some of the comedic elements because Hiccup, that is such a huge part of his character. He's witty, he's quick, he makes light of the situation. That's his nature. And I wasn't feeling that right away. But as the movie went on, they give Mason a little bit more to do, and it just naturally that's what the character gets. And I absolutely bought in. And there is one sequence in particular where he I guess he did some sorry. And there's one sequence in particular where Mason's performance actually added to the character, which is something that I'm looking for in these. And it's specifically, all I will say is that there's a speech that his father is giving that doesn't quite frame Hiccup in the best light. And they made such a good decision to just focus in on Hiccup in a very sort of dark, shadowy area in that moment. And Mason's face is giving all the emotion, and you can literally see the drive in his eyes to be like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And for me, that worked so well. I'm really intrigued to see how he's going to grow the character even more in future installments.
Yeah, I actually found myself wondering if they shot this movie from beginning to end and not in
Mm.
like random chunks, because I completely agree with you. His Mason's performance as Hiccup really grew on me throughout the movie, and it almost seemed like he felt more comfortable and confident in the role by the end. But I will also say the problem with doing such a shot for shot remake is that Jay Baruchel is the comedic Hiccup. His voice just is that. So when you don't give someone much of an adjusted script and they've seen that movie, that's what's in their head. And he really figured it out by the end, but I applaud Mason for doing his best Jay Baruchel. Like, he was very inspired by him, and it's hard not to be. It's such a fantastic and hilarious character, but there are moments where the comedy, he kind of like tried to figure out his own way to do it, and he really got there by the end. So I applaud him. I applaud everybody on this cast who is new to these roles, because these shoes are huge to fill.
And you can tell that he probably did grow up with the movie. He's
Yeah.
watched the movie a ton, and that is for better and for worse.
Yeah.
I would say especially at the beginning of his performance. But I
Yeah.
think, to your point, Megan, I think he kind of melds into his own by the end, and I'm excited to just sort of see him be more his own in the future.
Yeah, his performance almost felt like at the beginning of the movie when he was trying to be that unsure, uncomfortable Hiccup. It was going into that witty side, which in the animated film, even when Hiccup felt out of place, he was still on point with that comedy, whereas Mason wasn't quite selling it at the beginning. But like you said, by the end of it, you're like, oh, this is Hiccup. I want to see him ride more dragons and make that wingsuit next movie. Like, I want to see him go on this adventure. And I believe him now as to be Hiccup. So it was a really cool performance to swing me that much over the course of a movie, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I will say, unlike Hiccup, for me, Nico Parker as Astrid, I think she nailed it out of the gate for me. I remember one of my problems with the first movie, and I told you this, Megan, when we talked about it, was I just felt that the chemistry between Hiccup and Astrid, that there was something missing in that original animated version, and they definitely fix it in the second one, obviously, because they get more time together. And again, I understand the reason that you've got a short period of time. The focus needs to be on Toothless and Hiccup, and that's what the relationship you need to drive. I completely get that. I just would have liked a little bit more when it comes to the relationship between the two of them. And I felt as though Nico Parker did a really good job when we talk about, again, acting with your face, acting with looks. And I felt more coming from her in terms of the way she interacted with Mason in this movie. And I also just think she nailed the badass movements and the way that she like flipped her axe around, the way she gets mad, the way she gets angry and ticked and pissed off. I think she pulled it off pretty believably. She wasn't my favorite in this movie by any means, but at no point in time did I not think of her as Astrid, in my opinion.
Yeah, she was Astrid to me too. Again, from minute one, she was nailing, like you said, the badass warrior, best up and coming warrior in the village. So, getting to see her again add a bit more to that character, and like you said, flesh out that relationship a bit more. She has a great moment when she's talking to Hiccup about the differences in where they stand in the village and how they got to where they are and stuff like that. And it was a really impactful scene that kind of stood out to me. So yeah, a great performance, and again, never didn't feel like Astrid.
Wow. I
Real opposite. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I struggled with this Astrid.
Mhm.
Oh my god, I feel awful. I feel literally the exact opposite. I didn't get any emotion from her, from my perspective. I do completely agree. I think she looked incredible. I loved the look of her. I loved her braids. I loved her outfit. Her performance physically was fantastic. She was a super badass. She hit her stunts perfectly. I just struggled so much feeling the connection between the two of them. I didn't feel any deep emotion from her, and I don't know if this is Nico's first big film or if she's acted in a bunch of stuff. I'm sorry I didn't dig deep into her acting repertoire, but I just feel like I didn't get the emotions on her face. I didn't get the frustration or the flirtation at any point through the movie. Until maybe the very, very, very end. But I really struggled with Astrid. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's how you experienced it. That's the whole point, right? I think it's one of those things where, again, we're coming into these movies from completely, some from the same point of view as fans, but we all have a different relationship to these movies and to these
Yeah.
characters, and so we're going to experience them differently, and that's one of the beautiful things about these. That's one of the positives about something like a
Yeah.
live action adaptation. I would say is the ability to see these things in different ways and to be presented with them in different ways, and I'm happy that in some ways, not always, this movie managed to do that. But I'm going to bring up someone that I think we're all going to agree with. I hope, at least. Gerard Butler as Stoic
Oh,
the Vast. Okay, we're all on board. Let's go. This is another one of, like the music of John Powell. This is another one of those, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix
Don't
it.
fix
yeah,
it.
Don't fix
literally.
it. I think the thing that I loved so much about his portrayal is, how like we hear all the time about voice actors and voice acting and how it's just acting in a booth, but they've captured the sound. Now we get to see the other side of that. And it's so cool. It's so awesome that we're getting this opportunity to see that. It's so awesome that Gerard Butler has gotten the opportunity. It looked like he had a blast. We learned that he almost wasn't able to do it. And because of the actor's strike that happened, things got shifted around and it allowed him a short period of time to come in and be a part of this movie. So, a horrible thing to have happen. Obviously, we don't ever wish any of these strikes or any of these people to not get paid what they're due. But at the same time, there's always a shining
Silver
light
lining.
somewhere, a silver
Yeah.
lining
Yeah.
somewhere, and Gerard Butler in this movie was that. And I will say there's a few moments in this movie where, whether it's him getting giddy, like him being happy and laughing and getting excited, is something that, the people at DreamWorks are phenomenal. They've always been incredible at animation. But the face of Stoic, because he's got such a big beard in that original animated film, I don't think it was as expressive as Gerard Butler was able to pull off in a non-animated form. When he opens his eyes really wide, it's like he's just completely embodying the element of an animated character in real life. And I think he did such a phenomenal job in moments where we get to see that emotion driven. We get to see him again laughing, smile, or just him being proud and seeing that in his eyes and him welling up. And it's just, Gerard Butler, obviously he's an incredible actor. You already all know this if you're listening to this, but of course he's amazing as Stoic.
Yeah, when you're doing a remake like this and you are replacing everybody pretty much with a new actor to play those characters, to bring one back, and this is the perfect one to have brought back. Like, literally, I can't imagine anybody else being Stoic. He's so good, he's so boisterous, and he fills that massive presence that he gives the voice of the animated character. Him physically still fills up that huge block of a human,
Yeah.
and it really showed on screen, and even more so, almost like you're saying, he was so much more expressive, but even vocally, he put this crazy heavy rasp on his voice compared to the animated movie, and it was outstanding.
I just wonder if that rasp came from him, being 15 years later
That
from
much
that first
older.
one. He just trying to put that voice on now is that much more straining and comes out that much
Mhm.
more vicious almost.
and also maybe being like frozen in the
No,
cold Northern Ireland weather.
remember, Dean said he was the only one who wasn't freezing because he had like 100 pounds of costume
So
on,
much
so the
stuff.
beard was not sticking to his face at times. So
Right,
I don't
right. He
think he
did
was
say that.
cold. He may have been too hot at times.
That's what it was.
But yeah, he had a great performance. Even the fact that, like, looking at his costume, it's not feasible at all in the real world. It is, and the fact that you can see his body underneath there. They didn't make him wider or the size of Stoic. They just gave him a lot of armor, but he still managed to wear that and make it look like it would work. And just
Yeah.
the meaty paws they put on him too, like the massive hands. So when he's punching a dragon, you're like, yeah, a dragon would feel that punch. I believe it. It was just, it was great to see him come to the live action thing and just give it his all, because he looked like he had a blast while he was doing it. So that's always fun.
It was awesome seeing a dragon get punched in the face. Now, I want to throw this one to Darcy because you said something to me that just felt so fitting about Nick Frost and his portrayal of Gobber the Belch.
Yeah, I mean, Gobber was one of my favorites from the movie too. I mean, he is the mentor to the up and coming Warriors this year. But Nick Frost in the role just felt like a preview of what we're going to get of him as Hagrid in the upcoming Harry Potter series, which I'm on board for. I mean, it's Nick Frost. I seldom don't like him in things. He's one of my favorite Santa Clauses from a Doctor Who episode, but just him bringing his own flair to what Craig Ferguson did, just making it his own. Just, I was on board. I'm like, yeah, this is Gobber too. It's a different Gobber, but it's still Gobber.
Yeah, I totally agree with that comment. It's different. He's brought like a British version of Gobber rather than Craig Ferguson's Scottish Gobber.
Yes.
But it was fantastic. His sense of humor and witty banter with the other characters, whether it be Hiccup or Stoic or whoever he's interacting with, did not skip a beat. He brought the, you know, judgmental joking that he gives to Hiccup, as well as the like unacknowledged best friend of Stoic. And it's all in all just a fantastic portrayal of that character, and he made it his own.
Yeah, and I think him and his amazing mustache in this, that's where I will applaud absolutely hair and makeup, like phenomenal job. And sorry, just one thing with hair really quick, and I'll just run back to Gobber, but Astrid's one piece of blonde hair, that was really sick, just as to honor the original hair of the original character.
Very cool.
Fantastic. But Gobber, his eyes are so kind. Nick Frost is just such a lovely human, and we had him in Skeleton Crew, and it was a very different role, and so it was kind of nice to see him in a role that sort of felt like it was a bit more Nick Frost, as well as because he's not a robot or a droid, but seeing him here, seeing his eyes emote. And I will say, there are a lot of jokes that are said line for line in this film. And some of the stuff with Stoic definitely worked. As I mentioned, some of the humor from Hiccup worked. Some of the other characters said some jokes that I just didn't laugh, whereas I definitely laughed at them the first time around in the animated film. Pretty much everything that Gobber said, Nick Frost said, I laughed, even if it was something that I'm like, I could say that along with him as we were watching the movie. So I didn't, because that would be annoying. But no, I thought he was great. Now, speaking of some of those other characters, the last few performances I want to quickly talk about and touch upon. The Fire Brigade, for me, was a mixed bag. I think Julian Dennison, Darcy and I were chuckling at Julian Dennison. Fish Legs was great. Getting to see him geek out over every dragon detail as a fellow geek, that hit so hard. Like the fact that I can remember the first 3 generations of all the Pokemon and like most of the things about them and the differences between a Pikachu's male tail and a female tail, like those are things that I connect with so much. And so I think Julian Dennison absolutely nailed it.
Mm-hmm. He was great, and then I also really liked Snotlout, who was Gabriel Howell. Yeah, he did a great job. Like, again, we got more of the Fire Brigade in the live action than we did in the animated, and some of it worked, like I said. And I think the 2 that worked the most were Snotlout and Fish Legs for sure, because they brought more of the characters that were already so fun and endearing from that first movie. But now we get to see a bit more of his relationship with his dad in this one, and just everything about it. I think his delivery of some of those, again, rewritten or re-recorded jokes landed a lot better this time around. Almost, it was really cool.
Yeah, I also think it was really fun that they did take liberties in the looks of these characters and made them a little bit different. Roughnut was fantastic. I think she was so funny in the very few moments that we got to interact with her, whether she's interacting with Astrid or her brother or anybody else. She does bring this really hilarious version of Roughnut to the screen. And I completely agree with you. Fish Legs was a highlight of that group for sure.
Yeah, I think there was something with Tough Nut and Rough Nut that they didn't feel dumb enough for me,
Yeah.
oddly enough. And I
Fair.
know that there's kind of saying all the same things, but the way that they played them, they just felt like, and I get it, maybe that's more the sensibility of a modern audience versus a 2000s audience, right? And whatever, but I just sort of was like, and don't get me wrong, I get very mad at how dumb especially Rough Nut is in the third film.
I was just gonna say they get
Horrible.
dumber as the movies go, so
So
I
maybe
think
we still have a chance for the dumbness. Just really quickly on Gabriel Howell, because I wanted to just shout out. I loved how Snotlout felt like a '90s classic bully, like from a '90s movie. And maybe that's just my dumb 30-something-year-old brain imagining this, but every time he talked, he gave me the vibes of like a '90s bully, his mannerisms, and I just think there was something so likable in how awful he was at being cool. Just like the original animated character, but almost like on another level. And I was very, very happy with how Gabriel Howell portrayed him, and kind of just the odd little choice to add a little bit of Peter Serafinowicz in there. Kind of helped to endear you to the character a little bit more with their relationship. But let's talk about the story. Obviously, this is an adaptation, so we are, for the most part, staying spoiler free for those who've not watched the original animation, the original animated film. But yeah, let's get into the story. I want to kind of throw it to Megan first and just sort of ask, what did you think of how they adapted the story for this live action reimagining?
well, as least spoiler as I can be, I literally wrote adaptation. It was pretty much the same movie.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
For a remake, it was as close as I've ever seen anybody get to a shot for shot remake. They do add some really beautiful length to some emotional scenes, which I really
Hmm.
cared about. And there's we just get a little bit more of everybody, which I really appreciate. And again, I'm just really grateful as a huge fan of these movies that Dean DeBlois came back and did this justice, because it's his baby and it's his heart, and he really kept his heart in this, and I appreciate that as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I like the story. I mean, I like the original movie, so I'm not gonna not like it when they tell it to me again. I think my biggest issue with it is that it didn't do in what like enough that was new. Like they did add
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
to it. Like they were talked about the world building. They mentioned about how all the Vikings they're the best warriors from around the world who came to Berk to generations ago to fight these dragons, and that's how it's such a diverse peoples in this village, which makes sense. It's really cool how they're building up that world and lore slowly, but the fact that that's really all it felt like they added, except for a bit more, like you said, of those emotional moments that they drew it a bit more or gave us a bit more time with the fire brigade, stuff like that was just like, that's cool, but you're not going far enough that I'd like a bit more of a step out. And I'm hoping that with a sequel that maybe they do go a bit more in a new direction while staying true to those story beats.
Yeah, I think you both are nailing it. This version of the movie, of the story, it comes down to what you want out of these live action reimaginings, right? And I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give anyone who has seen the original but hasn't seen it in a very long time is, don't do what I did. Don't rewatch it prior to this new one. I think you will actually enjoy this new one more having not revisited that original animation, unless you're like Megan, you watch it every like 2 weeks or whatever. Um, but but no, I think there's definitely a lot to commend, like you said, Megan, about how well they nailed to not just sticking to every story beat, but every moment, every major line of dialogue, every sort of even sometimes shot or character turn or action was pretty much identical. And I think if you are looking for that, you are going to adore this movie. And I still think every How to Train Your Dragon fan needs to see this film in theaters and in IMAX. But for me, like you said, Darcy, I would have loved a bit more of an expansion, a bit more of a change up. The discussion that Dean had, like you said, about costuming and how they added more diversity was something that he always wanted to do in the original film, but they just weren't able to. And so that's where he had the opportunity to add it here. And I think we like you said, we got moments of a slight dialogue change, or a thing that sort of adds a bit more backstory to a character, but there was definitely not enough. And I would have loved to have seen more, because I want there to be more reasons to revisit this version of the
Mhm.
movie. Megan, you talk about rewatching that original one over and over again. I would love to be able to sit down and have both in front of me in some sort of virtual queue, because we don't have physical media anymore, unfortunately. But to have both, let's say, the collector steelbooks in front of me and go, well, I want to watch this one or this one, but now I just won't want to watch the live action because it's the
It's
same.
the
And
same,
so
yeah.
I think the big thing though is like, I am excited that new generations will get a chance to grow up with this story because, like you said, Darcy, its stories, its themes, its messages still hit really hard. It's just we've gotten some really great adaptations. And I know that, trust me, there's a lot of, don't come at me, but there's a lot of people that don't like the second season of The Last of Us. And I disagree, thinking that, I think it's cool because The Last of Us season 2 gives you opportunities to see things in a different light, from new perspectives, to see the same situations happening, but go, oh, I never thought of it that way. And they're able to do that because they push further on the audience to say, listen, this isn't exactly what you know. We're doing something different here. And some people don't like that. And that's okay. But that's what I want. And I just think they have an opportunity to shine a new light on what they crafted 15 years ago, or to even fix things that they felt didn't work then or now. And there just wasn't enough of that. And like you said, Darcy, I really hope in the sequel that they push harder for it, because Dean talked about it. He talked about the fact that he wants to do more, and so I hope he holds true to that.
Well, and we are in the generation, I guess, of reimaginings. Everything seems to be getting remade these days. And it's such a fine line to cross between shot for shot remaking something because people love it that way, and changing the story maybe too much that
Mm-hmm.
it's not even you can't even call it the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know a remake that's done that successfully yet. A lot are really great. This one comes close, but it is a almost shot for shot remake. So, when we look forward to things that are being remade or retold, like The Last of Us, you're taking a very broad video game and reimagining it a little bit and telling a different story, or, with these characters that you know and love. And you hope that that reads. But yeah, it just kind of depends what you're looking for in media. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think to bring up Dean DeBlois' previous work with Chris Sanders, and again, there's a lot of problems online with the ending to Lilo and Stitch, the live action version. But in our review, we did talk about how it did feel like a successful, exactly what you're talking about, a successful interpretation that changes just enough. I also think something like, and again, don't come at me, but I actually kind of really did like some of the changes they made to Aladdin to give Genie a bit more backstory. That movie's not. I probably shouldn't be holding it on the same level, but ultimately, I'm just saying, like, I completely agree with you. I think there are ways that people can go too far, but when you have movies like Lilo and Stitch that involve Chris Sanders directly, you have movies like How to Train Your Dragon that bring Dean DeBlois back as a director. I think we can find that. I think we absolutely can find that perfect that balance there, and make fans happy, because I do think this movie will make a lot of fans happy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also just going to frustrate some at the same time, and that's kind of how I feel about the story.
That's fair.
But let's get to our final thoughts, which we're going to be rating this film on a scale of
Oh God.
1 to 5 dragon scales.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So listen, when we're doing this review, there's going to be a few hiccups along the way. Megan, hilarious. Go ahead.
Well, bringing some of my most beloved characters to life, quote unquote, was something I was very nervous about. I'm not going to lie. But I do believe that this remake delivered it. And I'm calling it a remake. I'm not calling it a reimagining because it's a remake. You remade the movie. Um, but this remake, it delivered, brought to us by its original director. I felt my heart swell and drop in all the same moments. The music, the landscapes, and the dragons all brought me back to Berk, the same Berk I met in 2010. If you're a fan of the originals like me, all I'm going to tell you, as we've been saying it this whole time, is just go and see this movie the way it's meant to be seen in theaters. I'm going to give this film a 4 out of 5 dragon scales.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Again, this movie, with my only issue being the fact that it didn't do more, isn't a fault against the movie, because again, this story is already incredible and so inspiring. During the Q&A, Dean talked about how excited he was to bring wonder back to movies, and that's exactly what this movie does. Is it captures the wonder. It makes you want to go out and fly a dragon on your own if you could find one. Wish they existed, because this is the best depiction by far. They actually seem friendly and they're not going to hurt me like House of the Dragon or anything like that. So yeah, again, with the story being the only issue, the look and feel, the cast was incredible. This is a wonderful return to the world of How to Train Your Dragon, and I'm giving it 4 out of 5 dragon scales.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. There is a ton of heart and soul from Dean and the entire creative team and cast and crew and the folks at DreamWorks Animation in those original films, and now especially here in this version. I think the cast, as we mentioned, is phenomenal. I think Gerard Butler steals the show in the scenes that he's in. He brings even more to his role this time around. The story and its messages all still land. And if you do go see this movie for any reason at all, it's to hear John Powell's phenomenal score as Toothless and Hiccup take flight on a giant IMAX screen. I really enjoyed so much of this movie. I just wish it did more to give me more reasons to suggest it in addition to the original. Dean has come out in interviews saying he doesn't mind if people still prefer the original to the new one. He says that's great. He's very proud of those films and what they represent to those people. And he doesn't want this movie to replace it, but just live alongside it. And I think it can, and I think it'll be a great way for folks who've not seen the original animated film or didn't grow up with it to get into this world and hopefully get back and then enjoy the animated trilogy for what those films are. But for everyone else, myself included, I really hope the reimagined next chapter, not the remade next chapter, the reimagined next chapter of these movies just gives us more of a reason, gives us new perspectives, new ways to see this world and these beloved characters. So yeah, I think you should see this movie regardless. It's still a great time in theaters. And again, see it in IMAX if you can. I'm giving this version of How to Train Your Dragon a very, very solid 3.5 out of 5 dragon scales. But that is it for our spoiler-free review for How to Train Your Dragon. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, and you want to share your thoughts on this movie or any of the movies or series that we cover, well, let me just ask Megan to saddle up and do her best dragon call to tell you all the Viking-approved ways that you can get in touch with us. Which dragon is that?
Yeah, what dragon?
Is that from the show? I thought you didn't watch it.
Okay, let me try again. Nope.
No, doesn't got it. It's all good.
You can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But if you maybe sound more like Toothless's grumble that I also am not going to try to do, you can find us on Instagram at wearegeekcentric or on what I'm going to continue to call Twitter at geekcentricyt.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. We're on TikTok. Did you say TikTok as well?
No, I didn't. What's our TikTok?
TikTok's the same as the Instagram. So you can find us. We'll be there. But I will, you brought up Toothless's grumble. All I will say is there's just a moment where he's stuck and it just makes me cry. It's so sad. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows, including our recent spoiler-free reviews out now for Predator, Killer of Killers. From the world of John Wick, Ballerina, Lilo and Stitch, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, which that sounds like I just read one movie. Lilo and Stitch,
Lilo and Stitch, The Final Reckoning.
The Reckoning. Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, and HBO's The Last of Us Season 2. We've also got some great interviews to check out, like our most recent interview with Josh Wasung, the co-director of Predator, Killer of Killers, where he spoke to us about bringing the Predator franchise into the world of animation and how fan reactions helped shape the idea of a multi-era anthology film. So Justin killed it with that one. Definitely go check it out. We've also got interviews from the cast of Lilo and Stitch, Andor Season 2, and more. And things are just heating up as the hot geek summer is getting underway. Get your suntan lotion on because we've got even more coverage for all things geeky, including upcoming coverage for Pixar's Elio and some interviews from that film on the way, as well as coverage of the Big Three. That's what I'm calling them, the Big Three in July, where we're talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, Superman, and Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps. They are on, all of those films are on the way. I don't know if we're going to sleep. We'll see. Be sure to subscribe either here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. You can check out our interviews there and see our smiling, laughing, giddy faces. Megan, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this roaring review.
Oh my God.
And as we say, love ya.
Laters.
Bye.
Jay Baruchel, I'm so sorry.